in school right now, Wednesday afternoon, 2 o'clock. But instead you're home trying to homeschool and all those things, and you can't go and play soccer and stuff after school and everything. So I thought I would offer this up to you guys as a trial to see if this is a way that works for you guys to ask your questions and get your answers, and if it works, we'll do it more often. So not only give me your questions, but also you know, think about what works about this and what doesn't work, because we can always change it. So this is just going to be very casual. I was saying before I did this, I thought of putting on a jacket and the mayor's chain and everything like that and making it like official and merry and everything. But then I thought that's M-A-Y-O-R-Y, not M-A-R-Y. But then I thought I would just do it casual, so that the point of this is to just for us all to just talk about stuff. So if you guys have your questions, get them ready. And I know that a few of you sent me questions already. So Macklin, do you have a question that you wanna ask to start it off?
What else?
Not really.
No.
You sure? Okay. I'll start off with Macklin's question then. Macklin's mom emailed me a question that she would like to know: when will the kids be able to play with their friends again? So that question makes me a little bit sad, if I'm honest, because I can't give you a clear answer. I did get this question from one other person too. Who was it? Dean Smith. Are you there, Dean? Yeah, there he is. So Macklin and Dean, you guys asked when would you be able to play with your friends again? And I like I say, it makes me a little bit sad because I don't know. So the reason that I don't know is that myself and all of your Zorra Council, Oxford Council, the provincial government and the Premier, right now we're all working really hard to take our advice from public health officials. And public health officials are the doctors and the nurses that understand the science of disease and how diseases spread. And we're trying our best to use their expert advice about diseases. And they're working hard to try and figure it out, because this is not a normal disease, right? It's not the same disease that we've always dealt with before, like flu or common cold or anything like that. So they're trying to understand that and give us the best advice to keep everybody safe. So while they're trying to figure that out, we're keeping all the current controls in place, so we all stay home and stay safe until they figure out a way for us to go out and still be safe. So I can't give you an answer as to when we're going to be safe, but I can tell you that the provincial government sent out a press release on Monday, I think it was, and it laid out not the plan to reopen the province, but it laid out how they were going to decide how to reopen the province. So and it was full of a whole bunch of ideas about the safety of Ontarians being the first and foremost consideration, and then trying to open up things like childcares and schools and businesses so that kids could get back to playing with their friends. But probably things like sports teams, sport events like soccer and baseball and stuff are probably going to be a fair bit far away. It may not even happen at all this summer, because as soon as you have sports teams, you don't just get 5 or 10 people together, you get a lot of people, right? You get 2 whole teams, you get all the parents and grandparents coming out to see. And that's exactly the kind of thing that right now we don't want to have happen. So I think in terms of getting out to play with your friends, probably a couple of months, probably. But that'd be even probably just 1 or 2 families getting together, maybe to kick a ball around in the playground or something like that. But that's about as clear. And I wish I could give you a clearer answer, but the fact is right now, there's not a whole lot of solid facts on when it's going to be safe to do that stuff. So I don't want to give you an answer that turns out not to be true. Does that answer your question, Macklin?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a follow-up or anything to that, or?
You have another question?
Nope, I don't. But
Dean,
I think
what about you?
Yeah.
I know it's not the answer you wanted to hear, but we're not really in a situation that any of us wants to be in right now, right? We're just trying to make the best of it. Did you have a follow-up at all, Dean?
No.
Okay. So Riker, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
Yes.
What's your question?
Are you the boss of Township? And this is on behalf of me, on behalf of her, and on behalf of me.
Okay. So no, I'm not the boss at Tempsford. Mayor is a little bit different than being the boss. So the mayor, it's a really good question, by the way, because a lot of people, and not just kids, a lot of adults think that when you're the mayor, you're the boss. Or frankly, that when you're Katie, who's up there on my screen, who's the Ward 2 counselor, that's largely for the Tempsford area, that she's the boss of Tempsford. And neither of us is the truth. So the boss of the township is council. So it's not me who's on council or Katie who's on council. It's all 5 of us together are the boss. So the idea of that is that even though I think I'm pretty good at the job that I do, and I frankly, I think Katie's pretty good too, that any one of us could make stupid decisions, right? But if you get 5 of us together and we all talk with each other, hopefully we'll find a compromise idea that we can agree on. But even if we don't agree on it, you at least have to get 3 of the 5 of us to agree on some kind of solution. And hopefully then you reduce the chances of any one of us saying, I'm the boss and I'm going to make the decision, but whoops, I made a stupid decision, right? So the real answer is council is the boss, not any one counselor is the boss, okay?
Does that make sense? Yep.
So the only other thing I would add to that, Riker, is that it's Tempsford is a village within the township of Zorra. So council is the boss for the whole township, right? There's a whole rectangle shaped thing called Zorra, and Tempsford's a village in the southwest corner. Embro's on the east side, and Lakeside and Kintor and a whole bunch of other little tiny villages all over the township. So council is the boss for all of that, really. So Clara Smith, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
When will everything be opened again?
So do you mean everything wide open just like it was before March 17th?
Yep.
So again, I can't really give you a clear answer on that one, because the same kind of answer as to Macklin and Dean's question before. All the doctors and nurses doing the science to try and understand how the coronavirus works don't really have a good idea yet of how to totally fight it and keep everybody safe. So we can't reopen everything and let everybody go back out because we don't have a good idea yet of how to keep everybody safe when they go back out. So what we're trying to do is all the public health officials that we get advice from, and right now Katie and I are in a phone conference with the Chief Medical Officer of Health for Southwestern Ontario every other day. We talk to her every other day and get the latest advice from her. And we're waiting for advice from her that says, we can open and let people go back to doing normal things, but only when we have measures in place that we can put in to keep them safe doing that. And until we can do that, we got to keep everything closed so that we don't go out and all make each other sick by coughing on each other and shaking hands and touching things and things like that. So same kind of answer. I wish I could give you a clearer one, but the only clear answer I can give you right now is that staying closed up right now is the safest we can be, and things will open when the public health people think that we can open and go out more and still be safe. So that might mean a vaccine. It might mean maybe some other kind of control measures like masks or something like that, or it might mean certain businesses might open sooner than others, and they might only open for curbside pickup or delivery. They may be open, but you might not be able to go in and wander around and shop with other people. So the short answer is I don't know yet, because the doctors, nurses, and scientists who are studying coronavirus are still trying to figure out a safe way to open everything up. Have you got a follow-up or anything for that, Clara? Is that good enough?
That's good.
Okay. And I think I got somebody hit a chat here. Alyssa has another question. What's your question, Alyssa? Did you unmute your microphone?
Okay. So is this our Bible meeting about coronavirus,
Is this your what?
Is this our Bible meeting about the coronavirus?
I don't know if I'd call it a Bible meeting, but it's kind of a community meeting for kids and their mayor. Is that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Did you have a question about anything else, Alyssa?
I mean, about the coronavirus, has anyone studied it or whatever, about who's gonna?
So it's kind of hard to hear you, but I think what I heard was, have I studied it? So I haven't studied it. And really, like a lot of issues that council considers or a mayor considers, we're not the experts in it. So I'm not a doctor or a nurse or a scientist in the context of viruses and disease. Same thing. I am an engineer, but I'm not an engineer on public work. So like roads and bridges. Same thing with emergency services like fires. So the township, municipal government have staff of experts. So we have public works staff and engineers that look after roads and bridges. We have the fire chief and all the firefighters that are the experts in fire. And in the case of things like coronavirus, we have experts like the Dr. Locke is the chief medical officer of health for Southwestern Ontario. And she's an expert in public health issues like the coronavirus and how to keep us all safe and what the best practices are for us to all do on our own, and for businesses to be open, and for municipal government to put controls in place to keep us all safe. So they study it and they give myself and Katie and council advice. And then we consider that advice, and the province is doing exactly the same thing. The chief medical officer of health for Ontario gives the premier and the provincial government advice, and then they consider that advice and decide what things to do to keep us all safe. And so they've decided that the safest thing right now, and until they figure out how to fight this virus, either with treatment if we get sick or a vaccine to stop us from getting sick, the best thing is for us to stay home and not go out and get sick. So that, I don't know if that fully answers your question, or even if you're there, I think you might have dropped out. Does anybody else have a question they want to ask? It doesn't have to be coronavirus. It can be anything you want. I don't mind. Are Claire and Dean cooking up a question there, but they're too embarrassed to ask it?
Yeah, Claire wants to know a little bit more about your job. So what do you do every day?
So I'll answer that in two ways. So my job most of the time is to go to meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. And in between the meetings, I meet with people. Because most of my job is to try and figure out what do residents, so I have, the other thing is I have two jobs really, right? I'm the mayor of Zorra Township, and I'm also your representative on Oxford County Council. So I sit on two different councils that are responsible for different things. So my main job is to meet with people like this, meet with you guys, and understand what are the things that you care about and that you want to stay the same and that you want to change and how you want them to change. And then go to working meetings where I work with other politicians. So like when I go to Zorra Council meetings, I sit with Katie and the other members of Zorra Council, and then I go to Oxford County Council, and we all bring all the things that we've heard from all of our residents together, and we look at all the different laws that we have to work towards and everything, and we try and figure out what are the solutions that we want to try and deliver to our community, how much will they cost, and then we go back to our residents like you guys and say, okay, I heard what you want. We've worked on it. It's going to cost this much money. Do you want it? Do you not want it? Whatever. And we try and find compromise solutions to try and get people the services that they want at a cost that we all think we can afford. So most of my time is meetings like this with residents or with other councillors and mayors, and just talking with people is mostly what I do. Is I talk with people. I talk to them, I listen to them, and then I go and talk to other people about what those people told me, and then I talk to other people about what those people told me, and then go back and listen to more people. So it's a whole lot of talking and listening just about all day long, really, every day. And lately now, the second part of my answer is, and lately now it's all like this. It used to be driving around all over Oxford County and all over Ontario, really meeting with other councillors and mayors and other communities and ministers like the Minister of Transportation and Minister of Education and all kinds of things, Minister of Agriculture. But now it's mostly phone calls and Zoom meetings like this with little squares of people all up there all the time. But it's really just doing over the computer and the phone what I was doing before COVID by driving and sitting down with them to have a coffee or something like that and talk about things. Is that a good enough answer, Clara, or did you want to follow up something else?
That's good.
Okay. Anyone else? Does River have a question?
I think that Austin has a question, Marcus.
Austin, where are you? I don't see him on here. Oh, there you are, Austin. Go for it.
What are some things you are doing at home to keep busy with your family?
So you hit me in a soft spot there, Austin, because I feel a little bit guilty about that, because I know some parents are still at work and doing their normal work, going out to work. So my kid's mom, my wife, she's a pharmacist, so she's going to work just about like she normally did. Her work is different, but she leaves and goes to work a lot. Some parents are, have more spare time at home right now, and they're spending extra time with their kids doing stuff. But for me, I've been busier than lately because there's all normal council work and then all kinds of extra COVID stuff on top of that. And I'm not complaining about that. Don't get me wrong. It's the job that I signed up for, but I do feel a little bit bad for my kids sometimes because I spend a lot of time down in the basement down here doing work, and they kind of have to look after themselves. My kids are a little bit older. How old are you, Austin? 9? I'm lip reading there. 9. So my kids are well, 10, almost 11, and 14. So they're a little bit older, and they're able to look after themselves pretty well. But what we've been doing a lot of, especially as the weather got better, is we all have radio control cars. Do you have a radio control car? So we all have radio control monster trucks that we can drive around outside because we live in the country. So we drive them around outside a lot. And we all do archery. So we got out our bows and arrows the other day, and we're doing some archery. And we go for walks because we live on a really quiet country road. And since this coronavirus came, our road's pretty quiet anyway, but since coronavirus, there's almost never anybody on our road. So we go for walks up and down our road and watch for wildlife. And right now, all the turkeys are laying eggs. So there's tom turkeys getting together, a whole bunch of lady turkeys all the time, and it's really loud across the road from me in Wildwood. You hear the turkeys gobble, gobble, gobbling. You know that joke turkey sound that you hear on TV? That's for real. They really do that. And it's really loud. Like you can hear them a mile away. And then at night, if we're outside at night, we hear the coy wolves howling all around the house, in the woods beside us and in Wildwood across the road from us. So we're trying to get outside as much as we can. And like I say, radio control cars and archery and going for walks and things like that. What about you, Austin?
We're literally all we're doing is playing board games at the end of the day.
What board games?
Like Pictionary.
That's a good one.
Yeah. What is it? Jurassic World. Jumanji.
Yeah. Do you have any brothers or sisters, Austin?
One brother. He's
How old?
15, almost 16.
Have you guys ever played Risk?
I played it at my We've played it.
Oh, okay.
It's fun.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite games. You should try that one out. If there's 4 of you, that's a good one. And it takes a long time. If you need a game that takes a long time, Risk is a good one for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anybody else have any other questions?
I think Macklin has a question, Marcus.
Thanks, Alicia. Macklin?
How many people live in Chelmsford?
So that's a really good question. So we don't have an exact number for Chelmsford. The latest number we have for all of Zorra Township is 8,400 and I can't remember what, 13, I think it is, something like that. But what's interesting is the way we get that count is by a thing called the census. Have you ever heard of the census? No? So the census is something that the government of Canada does, where they mail a thing out to everybody in Canada. Every single household, like residential address, gets a survey mailed to them, and you fill it out and you say who you are, how many people live in your house, how old they are, all those things. But when they do that census, they divide up Canada into what they call census divisions. So all of Zorra is one census division. So the whole rectangle of Zorra is a census division. So it's not divided down as small as Thamesford or where I live in Uniondale or Embro. So we don't get an exact count, but we do have a rough idea, because when we give out building permits and things like that, and according to postal addresses, you have an idea of how many houses there are in each village and how big each of those houses are. So the estimate that we have for Thamesford right now is sort of in the 2,500 to getting close to 3,000 people, somewhere like that. But growing, right? I mean, there's houses being built in Thamesford. Like, how many are under construction in Thamesford right now is, I don't know, there's got to be 5, maybe 10. And I know that as of this morning at the township office, there's 10 applications for new houses sitting there waiting. And as soon as the restrictions are lifted, those 10 building permits will go out as well. And then that doesn't count the applications for subdivisions that are waiting to come. And those will be, you know, in total, there's a few hundred houses to be added into that. So Thamesford's going to get a lot bigger in the next 5. By the time you're able to vote, Macklin, in other words, there's going to be probably at least another 500 or 600 people in the village. Anybody else? Austin? No? Clara? River's staring at the screen there. Macklin have another one?
No, I think we're good. I think she wanted to see River. She wanted to see a little bit more of River, but. Oh, there we go.
There he is. Hey,
Hi,
River.
buddy.
He's
Why so
confused.
serious, hon? He's trying to figure it all out.
Yes. Why are they talking in my head?
Oh,
Hi, River.
little dude. There he is.
Smile.
Hi, dude. He's smiling.
So we got about 6 more minutes of kids time here until the adults come in at 2:30 and they get to ask their questions. So have you guys kids got any other questions about anything else? It doesn't have to be coronavirus. It can be whatever you want. I don't mind. What are you guys doing to fill your time?
A new hamster. Macklin would like to show everybody something she's been doing
Okay.
during all this extra home time.
Oh, wow. Is it a hamster?
Yeah,
What's her name?
Is it a boy or a girl?
girl,
And what's her name?
Riley.
Riley.
Yeah. I
Nice.
was gonna call her Azzy,
Yeah.
but name's right.
Wow. And does she stay in a cage or run around the house or what?
Oh, she does not run around the house because we have a dog.
Oh,
So she has a cage. I usually take her out sometimes and leave her in like another cage.
yeah.
And we are also getting a different cage because the cage we have is kind of breaking. So we'll have to get a new one.
Nice.
But she's a very good hamster. Macklin holds her most of the day.
And Riley likes it.
She does, actually. She's like
Good.
the most. Oh, we crafted this yesterday. So this is a little carrier. This is a little,
Like a hammock, a hamster hammock.
it's totally a hamster
And I
hammock.
can put it around me.
Yes. And it's, Macklin wears it.
Hilarious.
In there.
Yeah,
Somehow.
she's a really good little hamster that doesn't mind being.
There you go.
I want a
No.
picture of that, Macklin. I want a picture of you with Riley in the hamster hammock.
Let me hold it up. Look at.
Okay. So she's in there, but she's kind of hiding.
Oh.
I have to say, this is not what I expected was going to happen when we did this, but was hamster hammocks. But that's a warning for everybody in politics. When you have a public meeting, you never know what is going to happen. So
Right?
thanks for that, Macklin. You're a breath of fresh air.
River's embarrassed. Well, thank you for hosting, and this was awesome. We
My
appreciate it.
pleasure. Thanks for coming. Austin, I just figured out who you are, dude. I apologize. I saw your mom there, and now I know who your older brother is too. It took me a minute to figure that out. Anybody else have any other questions before we wrap up? Katie, or River, or Audrey, or Laura, or whoever.
I don't think
Unmute
so.
her. Oh, did I do it? I
Yep.
might have did. Okay. My question is, first a comment. This was amazing. My question is, will you be doing this again? And will you be doing it in maybe 2 or 3 more years? Well, let's maybe keep it to 2. Let's not overshoot things. So that River can ask some questions.
So I did talk with staff before we did this about that we would just do this as an experiment and see how it worked, first of all, and what kind of interest there was. And to me, this has worked pretty well. My goal for this was that it would be very casual like this, so that people wouldn't feel intimidated to join in and ask a question. Sorry, River. And there's a whole bunch of people have joined in, so I got some questions in advance. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at least kids have joined in to ask questions. So to me, that's a success. We had already talked before this that if it worked and it was a success, we'd look at maybe doing it again next week. I don't know if we'll do it every week from now on, but I think we'll probably do it again next week. And so you guys can all tell your friends, you know, if you thought this was, hopefully you thought it was good, but that they can phone up and just ask a question if they want about whatever they want, and no pressure. So that's my intention, Katie, is to do it again. And then I'll be honest with you, even when the COVID restrictions are lifted, we're a geographically large municipality, right? It's a big area. So even if we do a public meeting in Kintore or Thamesford or Embro, that's a bit of a drive for people, especially in winter and stuff like that. And when everybody's back at work and sports, it's busy, but we can all sit down and do one of these pretty easily. So I think there might be value in doing this going forward anyway, even without COVID restrictions to us doing it in person. So yeah, I'm all for doing it again. I see lots of thumbs up. That's good. All right, so it's 2:29. So all the kids can hang in there if you want and listen to the adult questions if you want. You don't have to go. It's up to you. But if you want to go, that's fine. And I'm gonna switch over now to take adult questions, and we'll do that. So if you guys are going, goodbye. If you're staying, you can listen in, and maybe it'll help you think of some questions for next week. Okay. Thanks a lot for coming, everybody. Look after yourselves. Stay safe. So it's 2:30 now. So for those adults that are that have joined in, hopefully I can't see. The only people I can see right now are Amanda and Katie. So everybody else, thank you, has your microphones muted. But if you want to turn on your cameras, then I can see you. It makes it a little bit more interactive. If you don't want to turn on your cameras, that's fine. I don't think the only question I had one question in advance, and that was from Sam, who I see turned on his camera up there. And I think that was the only question I had in advance from adults. So Sam, do you want to unmute and ask that, or do you want me to just go ahead and start answering, or what do you want to do?
remember.
I'll just go ahead and answer it then. I can see you there, Matt. You're muted, Matt, so we
There
can't
we
hear
go.
you. But yeah,
I'm not used to Zoom.
yeah, that's all right. It's working.
We use Teams, so I'm more adept to Teams right now. So
Yeah. Well, you're doing okay. It's 2:31, and we can see you and hear you, so that's fine.
perfect.
Yeah. So, Sam, the question that that Alicia forwarded to me from you was about the township's COVID response. So was there anything, I guess the one thing I would ask, is there anything in particular in the township's COVID response that you were interested in, or you want to just ramble on for a minute or two about things in general?
Please simply ramble.
Okay. So in terms of the township's response, it sort of progressed from the beginning of this. You know, it really started, if I think back, it was March sort of 12th and 13th was when it really started to change. You know, we had talked a little bit about what we would be doing to get ready to keep services being delivered when and if coronavirus got to Zorra Township, but not in a really substantial way. Sort of informally, staff had talked about how might we change things around. But then on the 12th and 13th of March, it became kind of clear that it was going to come in some kind of a way and affect us, even if people in the township themselves weren't sick, that around us, and there would be controls and stuff. And then when it got to March 17th, of course, the province declared a state of emergency, and then we started to take other efforts to try and get more formally address it. So it started off with things like just physical distancing for staff and residents, so that staff could do their job without being within 6 feet of each other and without being within 6 feet of residents who came to the township office to access services. I think the next thing then was probably we shut down a lot of recreation programming. I mean, some groups started to cancel themselves. They just felt that it wasn't responsible for them to proceed with recreation programming under those conditions, so they shut them down. And then we started to get proactive and shut down certain events ourselves, and then decided that once hockey got shut down, that we decided as a township that there was no reason to keep the ice in the rec centers and keep them open, so we closed those down. There was a lot. It's kind of hard for me to go back and remember this stuff because there was a lot happening at that point in time. It was kind of, you know, I think it was, I can't remember whose question it was before. One of the kids had the question about what my job is. And at that time in, you know, March 17, 18, 19, 20, well, for a couple of weeks there, it was just nonstop information. And so I may not have the exact chronology of how that all worked. It was frankly changing hour to hour at that point, what we were doing and what we were going to be doing. So then the rec centers closed down. After that, then township staff decided that they would split all the staff into teams. So our public works staff, which is one of the largest departments, already works out of two facilities, one in Cantor and one in Embro. So they were kind of in two separate teams already, but then they decided that those two teams would not interact with each other at all. And that was just to try and keep them from, if somebody in one team got sick, to stop it from spreading to the other team. So that was on top of their physical distancing. Then not long after that, we split the Cantor shop and the Embro shop into two separate teams as well, shifts. So a sort of a day shift and an afternoon shift, sort of. And again, that was to try and split them up so that they didn't cross-infect each other. And the intention of that was that if illness did get in to staff, that we would still have enough staff to get out there and back in March, you know, to plow snow if we needed to. But there's other things that especially Public Works does that's largely invisible to a lot of residents, and that is they drive around. There's requirements that they drive around and check all the roads for all the signs. So speed limit signs, stop signs, yield signs, bump ahead signs, all those kinds of things. There's a legislative requirement that they have to drive around and check all those things. And so we have to have enough staff to do all that. So we were trying to take steps to ensure that if sickness did get into that department, that we would still have, you know, try and keep it to a small team, a small group, so that we can continue to do those things and keep the roads safe. And then we did the same thing with office staff. They split into teams. And then those teams started to all like were alternating every other day. So they weren't in the office all together at once. And then they started to work from home. Then we shifted to all the office staff working entirely from home if they were able to, which they're not all entirely able to. Most of them come in about 1 day a week and have to do some physical mailing of things or filing of things or whatever. But other than that, work from home. Then council considered at the April meeting, I think it was the first meeting in April, or maybe it was the last meeting in March. We took some steps to allow us to do electronic council meetings, which before that was illegal for us to do. We could do electronic council meetings, but anybody who participated by something like this, like Zoom or by phone, wouldn't count towards quorum. So if we had 3 people participating like this, we couldn't have a council meeting legally. So one of the province passed legislation to allow us to do this. So we met to do that. And then we met next meeting after that to pass a resolution that we would waive interest and fees for anybody who didn't pay their property taxes for April and May on time. So the idea being that, you know, ultimately people would have to still pay those property taxes, but that if they were in a cash flow crunch because they weren't getting a paycheck or something like that for April and May, they could not pay that April property tax bill, and there would be no interest charge, no fee charge. They could just pay it then later on when their cash flow came back. So those property taxes still have to be paid, but the idea was if you can't afford it in April, pay it in May. If you can't afford it in May, pay it in June. You know, pay it when you're able. So we did that then in April, and then I brought a motion to Oxford County Council to do a similar thing because the area municipalities like Zorra pay a chunk of our property taxes up to the county to fund county services. So we're going to get a report back from the county on that. That hasn't been decided yet by county council. And similar for water and wastewater at the county. My motion was the same thing, that we get a report back on the, you know, how we would implement a waiver of late fees for water and wastewater bills. And then from an economic development perspective, there's a lot of businesses in Zorra and Oxford that are struggling without customers and business, no cash flow, but still have a lot of their expenses. So a lot of the economic development corporations in Zorra and Oxford have tried to help people access the grant programs and loan programs available from the provincial government, and B, come up with some for themselves. There's a brand new one from the Rural Oxford Economic Development Corporation. Now that only came out, I think their board met on Monday, or maybe it was yesterday, and came up with a small grant program. It's very small, but the idea is that it's very quick to access. So for a small business that needs funds sort of very quickly to, you know, to adapt or something like that, they can do that. And then Community Futures Oxford, which I know you're familiar with, Sam, has come up with a loan program that is really building on an existing loan program. And the idea of that, again, is to help with cash flow for businesses that are trying to either get through a dip in sales where their expenses don't dip, or help them transition to a world where I now take orders online and I do curbside and I have some costs to set that up that's different than my normal costs and things like that. So that's my rambling answer of the overall COVID response. I guess the only thing I would add to that, I guess, is that for the first 4 weeks of it, we were meeting daily with Southwestern Public Health, and daily all the mayors and CAOs in Oxford County were meeting as well daily, and we were having daily meetings with Zorra Council, and all of staff could phone in to one number. And just because so many things were changing so quickly, the idea was, let's all just get together and talk about stuff. So we would hear from Southwestern Public Health, and then the mayors would all talk about that and figure out, like, what do we do with this? Then in Zorra, we were going to our staff and saying, so here's the latest information. What are you guys struggling with doing in your job on a day-to-day basis? How can we change it? What questions do you have? And then the next day we'd go back to public health and say, well, based on what you told us and what we told staff, here's the questions they have back. And so there was sort of a circle of question and answer and information going on all day, every day. Now we've dialed some of that back as things have kind of settled into a new temporary normal. So all 3 of those meetings, the Southwestern Public Health, the mayors, and the staff meetings, have switched to every other day now, but they're still going on. And recently, I would say, starting about a week ago, I think, the conversation started to shift over to what might opening up look like. Largely that decision's not going to be up to us. It's going to be up to the province, but even within what the province says, we're going to have to decide. So exactly what's that going to look like for Zorra? What controls are we going to want to put in place? Are we going to want to do anything different or in addition to what the province recommends? And also, of course, there's the aspect of us suggesting to public health and to the province how we think it should open. So we've just begun those kinds of conversations. So now I'm done rambling on that answer.
So I want to say thank you for all the work that you're doing. You mentioned the impact it's having on your ability to spend time with your kids, and that's a drag. I mean, all of you, the politicians and the staff, you're doing a wonderful job, and we really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it, Sam. It has been a struggle sometimes with not spending as much time with my kids as I would like to. On the other hand, I do try to think that in these situations, all of us, I'm going to guess that probably all the people who've dialed into this are people who care particularly about their community and how it works, not just themselves and their close group, but their larger community. And I like to think that when we're doing this kind of work, we're also kind of modeling behavior for our kids. So even though dad's in the basement a whole lot, talking on the phone and on the computer, hopefully I'm showing them that, you know, when your community needs something done, you step up and you do your best to do what your community needs. So hopefully there's some value in that for them. And, you know, we do get outside and drive around the radio control cars and shoot some arrows at a bale of straw and stuff too. So
Any idea on the impact it's having on township expenses?
yeah, so we got an estimate before council passed the resolution to waive the late fees and penalty and interest on property taxes. We did ask for an estimate from staff on what that would cost. And the estimate was $15,000 per month to do that. So it's not, you know, a huge amount, but in the context of a Zorra budget, it's not a tiny amount either. I mean, $15,000 a month, you could do a whole lot in, you know, recreation services with that, for instance. You'd want to do it for a whole bunch of months before it added up to any kind of significant public works project, but it's not a tiny amount of money. But again, it's a bit of a mixed message to deliver to residents, because on the one hand, it's like, yeah, you don't have to pay your property taxes in April. So, okay, if you're having trouble with cash flow right now, that's a good thing. But you are going to have to pay it eventually. It's not a, you know, it's not a grant, it's a loan essentially by saying don't pay it right now. So in the long run, I don't think it's a real option to continue deferring property taxes. Although I will say we're expecting for our May council meeting a report from staff that starts to look at areas where we could do some cost savings. But it'll be a preliminary report. And so part of that is going to be how much have we lost. On the recreation side, we lost a fair bit because hockey shut down early. So we lost a whole lot of ice booking time in that. But because staff reacted so quickly, we also shut down the ice. And so reduced a whole lot of costs pretty quickly after that happened. And now for summer, you know, soccer isn't happening and baseball isn't happening, but in terms of a cost revenue balance, it's not as critical. So for some of our urban municipal partners, the financial impact of COVID is going to be much more significant. The reality is that for us, in terms of who our employers are and our businesses are in Zorra, a large chunk of it is agricultural, and they are still, you know, full steam ahead. I know driving around, I think probably at least 10, maybe 20% of fields might be planted already as early as this is. They're struggling with their own issues in terms of getting in feed and inputs and getting product out to be processed. But in terms of a lot of the jobs that a lot of people in Zorra do, you know, cows get milked 2 or 3 times a day no matter what. They don't care about coronavirus, right? I mean, they got to be milked, they get milked. Chickens lay eggs, pigs get fat, and it all keeps happening. So so in terms of financial impact, there will be one, but I think that it probably will be quite manageable, I would say, for Zorra in particular. As for the county, that'll be another matter, because there's a whole bunch of other services that the county delivers that will be much more impacted by COVID in terms of long-term care facilities and other human services that we deliver. So that's a much more complicated. Also, the library, obviously, you got a whole bunch of buildings there all over Oxford County that are shut down. A lot of library staff, and there's a lot of work going on there now to try and figure out how to most effectively and efficiently keep library people busy doing real work, or some of them have been redeployed. You don't want to lay people off, but at the same time, if residents are not getting services, at a certain point you have to say, do we need those? Do we keep paying people with people's tax money? So all those kinds of discussions are happening right now, and we're trying to find our way through it. And the reality is there's no playbook. I mean, frequently, I know Katie's on here, and I can see Marie is on here as well. And it's something that almost all councils ask whenever they're confronted with any situation is, well, what are other councils doing? Or what have other councils doing? Or what did we do last time? And there's no answer for that this time. So you're kind of struggling and reaching forward to try and find the ways forward. So I guess I would sum up by saying for Zorra, there's going to be a financial impact, but probably not too damaging. And there might actually be some advantages. Some construction projects might actually come in cheaper now than they were going to cost us. So there's a possibility there could be some savings there. We'll have to see exactly how that turns out, but there's some early indications that could happen. For the county, it's going to be a much more complicated question to answer as to what the financial impacts would be. I would say, just roughly speaking, it will be a bigger financial impact on Oxford County than it will be on Zorra Township.
I got a question about the recreation.
Yeah.
As of right now, we're kind of sitting at the, I guess, May 31st deadline. We're obviously still planning on having soccer seasons and baseball seasons unless something else changes. Has the township made an official decision that they've canceled all minor recreation in Zorra Township?
No, we haven't. And two reasons for that. So one, we're trying our best to take all of our advice from Southwestern Public Health and from Ontario Public Health and Canada Public Health, the doctors, nurses, and scientists who are trying to study this thing. And so because this is a new thing, as I was saying to the kids before, they had a very similar question. It's fascinating to see that, by the way. They ask it in a different way, but it's basically the same question. When can I play with my friends again? Right.
Yeah.
And the real answer is, because it's not influenza or the common cold, public health doesn't have a really good handle yet on how exactly is this transmitted and what exactly is the rate and what are the health consequences for people who get it. That's all still being learned right now. They have some ideas, but it's not hard and fast. So until there's either good drug type treatments for people who get sick or vaccines to prevent people from getting sick, they're still concerned that if we all get out and start doing stuff, it's not so much that it would be particularly deadly disease to Matt or Sam. It's that if Matt and Sam and a whole bunch of people all get sick at the same time, you all show up at Alexandra Hospital in Ingersoll at the same time, and they're like, we can't treat all of you at the same time. So even though each one of you may be perfectly treatable, whoever's seventh in line maybe just doesn't get treatment at all. And that's what they're really trying to prevent happening. So in terms of opening things up, the concern is that sports events like that are of particular concern. That, a couple of kids maybe playing soccer on the field, that might be the kind of thing that might get let up in the next month or so.
Okay.
Could a family go out and kick a ball around on a field? That might be coming in the next month or so. But my guess, Matt, is that the prohibition on teams going out and playing soccer on a field, or baseball for that matter, or anything, is probably a ways away, because not only do you have two teams of 11 kids on the field at the same time, but all the parents and aunties and uncles and grandparents that all come. And it's exactly the scenario that they're wanting us to avoid.
Yeah, essentially it's gatherings over 50 people, right?
Right.
And trust me, Wednesday night at the soccer field in Tempsford, you're almost like 300 people.
Yep.
So, and I know nobody wants to just jump the gun and completely cancel it. I definitely like to, if the township is thinking about opening parks to families, I think some definitely community input would be great. Obviously, you guys have been really good about getting that, so I don't doubt that you would kind of set up something like this to gather that. But that's even risky, right? Because you say, oh yeah, one family can use the baseball diamond. Well, what do you have to do? Go out there and sign up, because you know that
Absolutely.
there's going to be 50 families that want to go use the baseball diamond. So
Absolutely.
unfortunately,
and that, the other thing that
it's
happens is then you guys go out and you're responsible. You go out and you just, you're kicking a ball around. That's fine, whatever. That's good. Then another family shows up. So you stay at each end of the field, and that's probably fine. There's physical distancing, whatever. But then you chat and people move a bit closer, and then another family shows up, and that's the kind of balance. And Frank, I'll be honest with you, it's hard to make those decisions because you want to say we can trust people to use their judgment and do it, and most people will. The vast majority of residents of the township have been, I'll be honest with you, fantastic beyond what I ever imagined in terms of doing their part to comply with these orders and the spirit of these orders. It's been amazing. But that is exactly the issue, is once you let people do a little bit, do they do more? But we're going to have to do it. We're going to have to figure out a way to do it because we can't stay completely locked down for 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. So we're going to have to, back off a little bit. And you're bang on that there has to be a level of public consultation like this to talk to people about, so what do you think we could do as a community? What could we, essentially police each other nicely, calmly, to stay safe and achieve in a way that lets us get out and do some stuff,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly. And another question about the council meetings. Are you guys posting basically like you did today, open meetings for because council meetings are still open to the public?
Absolutely.
And you'll be basically tweeting out the dates, times, meeting information, and password?
So township staff put out the same notice that we always did about a council meeting in advance on I think it's usually, the agenda gets posted on Friday afternoons, one way or another. It gets posted on Friday afternoons and it's all available there. I'm not sure exactly what they have a social media posting schedule. So it all goes out at the top of the agenda now. Instead of saying the township office address, it says Zoom address or whatever. And it's exactly like what you're in now. So the 5 council members, staff usually have their cameras turned off unless they're presenting a report.
Okay.
And then if a member of the public wants to make a delegation, it will be just like this. They'll click into it just like you guys are now and make their delegation, ask their question, get their question and answers back and forth. So we're trying to treat it in every way exactly like a regular council meeting in chambers. And give all the same accesses that we do to the public under normal circumstances, but we're doing it through Zoom like this. Now, I say all that at the same time, I'm uncomfortable with it because I know there's technological hurdles that have to be overcome for people. Do you have a device to do it? Do you have an appropriate internet connection? Are you technologically comfortable, clicking in and making Zoom work and all those things? So, I think first of all, I can't applaud staff enough for the hard work they've done to try and work it out so we can do it, because we've had a couple of Zoom council meetings and they've gone extremely well. But I am a little bit nervous about how long this goes on for in a rural municipality where there are people who frankly barely technically have internet access. They have a wire that goes into their house, but in terms of live streaming audio and video reliably, quite challenged. So
yeah, mine's working pretty good and I'm on a rural connection. Yeah. So got lucky there, finally got that figured out. But no, definitely. And would this be something you guys would look to just continue even after we are back, 9 months, a year, 2 years, where yes, you're all sitting in the room, but you could also put it on Zoom. So then I can sit at my desk at work and be at council meetings.
Yeah. So I think in terms of council meeting together, I definitely think there's something in the debate that's lost by meeting virtually like this. There's
agreed. Yeah.
When you're debate, I mean, Katie and I can see each other right now and I can say what I want to say and she can hear and she can argue with me and we can do that. So technically it's happening. But when the 5 of us sit together, there's you know, there's body language and there's, you know, and it does add to it, you know, especially if a council is working well. That stuff really is sometimes that subtle stuff is where you really start to come and find a compromise and a consensus and that kind of thing. So but you're not the first person to say, you know, if council meetings were like this all the time, I'd watch from home. So I really think, and I've brought it up with staff already, you know, we need to be ready when this is over and council is meeting in chambers again. We need to be ready to still deliver this kind of access to residents, because I will tell you that the council meetings that we've had that have been on Zoom, there's been quite a few people who have watched it on YouTube later, because it's posted on YouTube as well.
Okay.
You can watch it after the fact. And people have watched. I'm not going to pretend that it's hundreds of people, but the fact that any people are saying, you know what, I'm gonna watch that is great. And if it turns out they're watching it because now it's on Zoom or on YouTube, then we should be offering that. And frankly, there's not a whole lot of difficulty and cost for us to continue delivering it that way. So that's definitely on the to-do list as we exit the COVID restrictions. Are there some things that we learned that maybe we didn't set out to learn them, but we learned them anyway, and let's keep doing those things.
Oh, for sure.
Katie?
Sorry, it always takes me a minute to unmute. I know Matt is just recently has joined into Facebook, just in the last couple of weeks, I think. So I wanted to point out to him, make sure that you are following, if you're not already, the Township of Zorra Facebook page, because it will always post reminders of when, not only when the meeting's going to happen, but when the agenda is posted. So it will show up on your news feed and let you know, and it'll give you a link direct to the agenda. It usually comes out on Friday afternoons, and then the meeting will be the following Wednesday. And there's always a reminder of that meeting. And so long as they've been Zoomed, there'll be a link for how to get in and watch it. And the other thing I wanted to point out is that our Oxford County Council is not using Zoom, but another format to do their electronic meetings as well. And so that's another meeting with content that does affect us as residents of Oxford County that you can tune into, especially with me having a little one at home. It's hard for me to go to more meetings than what I'm required to go to. And I have found since this started that I have the ability to tune in and to pay attention to what's happening at a county council meeting. And I would love to see that continue as well. So I'm on board with what you're saying. I hear it, I agree with it. And Mayor Ryan also has a Facebook page where he shares a lot of when these meetings are posted and the links to get to them. So I just wanted to add that.
Perfect. Yeah, it took a pandemic for me to join Facebook.
Well, I would. Katie made some good points there, and I would just add to that the township social media feed in particular is really good. Facebook, there's a lot of stuff that gets posted there that is, you know, I would say very, very relevant and user oriented, like towards residents, things they really need to know and presented in a accessible and timely way. So I really do encourage you to follow that. Katie's bang on with that.
Yeah, no, the Twitter feed I've found has been really helpful too.
Yeah.
I joined that a bunch of months ago, and that's definitely always has been helpful.
And they do both largely the same, not always exactly the same between Facebook and Twitter, because they are slightly different audiences. And that's why they do both, because there are some people who are like, no, I'm not a Facebook person, I'm a Twitter person, and vice versa. So there are both of those feeds available. And I think, Lisa, you're on this call, I think right now. Is everything the same between Facebook and Twitter, or is there some differences between what, like, basically what I'm asking is, will people miss out if they do only one as opposed to the other?
Nope, we just sometimes cut back on the letters, the number of letters. So there's sometimes more content on Facebook, but it's always the same
Okay.
information. Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa. Anybody else have questions or comments they want to ask right now? I see Mary Ellen and Wayne are there, and Embro joined a while ago, and Bunny and Thamesford. Rebecca, got a question? Just quietly doing your part there on Sloan. Katie?
It's not a question of mine, but Sam had asked at the beginning about Zorra's response to COVID. And I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on the decision of declaring a state of emergency here in Zorra, as some municipalities have, and how that relates to our provincial state of emergency and what led to the decisions that have been made so far. And of course, we don't know what kinds of decisions will come in the future.
So as many of you know, the province declared a state of emergency on March 17th. And basically from, I think it was on March 13th that I began consideration of whether or not the township should declare a state of emergency. And really, I guess there's a few things that I would make clear on that. So first of all, what Zorra is in a state of emergency and has been since March 17th. Oxford has, all of Ontario has. As soon as the Premier declares a province-wide state of emergency, that's a province-wide state of emergency, and we've all been in one since March 17th. What a mayor or a head of council has the authority to do is declare a municipal state of emergency. So that's a little bit different. What it means is that there is an emergency that is within that municipal boundary, and it could be anything, including a pandemic. It tends to focus more on being a municipal state of emergency, being the ability of the municipality to deliver the services that the municipality delivers, or that there is a particular danger to the residents of that municipality that you are struggling to manage. So it could be a wastewater emergency in Thamesford, where we're having difficulty delivering clean water. Or it could be a tornado goes through Embro and we don't have the emergency response capability that we need to have. So we need to call in resources to help. It could be a pandemic, in which case we would want to call in public health resources and expertise. We may want to call in provincial assistance in dealing with that. Or we may, one of the reasons that a head of council or a mayor can declare a state of emergency is if they just want to impress upon residents the severity or the importance of the situation they're in order to get them to participate in a constructive way or to comply with emergency orders and things like that. So basically, ever since March 13th, to one degree or another, I've been reviewing our consideration of declaring a municipal state of emergency. At the beginning, it was pretty intense considering it every day. And I know a lot of municipalities around us have declared. I've spoken with a lot of the mayors, St. Mary's, Thames Centre, North Dumfries. I can't remember what other ones around that I've talked to about what their reasons were to declare. And each one of them makes their own decision. It's the decision for a head of council, not for council. And really the meat of declaring an emergency is that this oversimplifies it somewhat, but it essentially makes the mayor or head of council the boss. That was one of the questions one of the kids had before in the previous one was, is the mayor the boss of Thamesford? And I said, no, but if you declare a state of emergency, essentially the mayor becomes the boss and you just tell staff to do this, do that. And the reason for that is in the case where there's a time sensitive emergency, there's been a lot of studies done on this stuff that quick decisive action is usually better than a delay to wait for the perfect action. And that if you wait for a council to get together and deliberate in a time sensitive emergency, the whole time you're deliberating and you may be coming up with an ideal solution, but in the time it took you to come up with the ideal solution, the situation has changed. And now your ideal solution is for a situation that no longer exists. And so you need to be able to act in a much more dynamic fashion. So for a variety of reasons up until now, I have felt that it is not worthwhile for Zorra to declare a state of emergency. We've, with the exception of recreation, which we've gone over a couple times already, municipal services in Zorra are still being delivered. Our staff are working harder and differently in order to deliver them, but they're still being delivered. So roads are being graded, snow is being cleared, taxes are being collected, fires are being put out. A little plug for Zorra Emergency Services, by the way. A few times they've gone and fought fires and they've actually been practicing physical distancing while on the scene of a fire. They've been able to manage to largely do both of those things at the same time. So those services have existed and are continuing to be delivered by staff. And there really hasn't been anything that we would do differently if we declared a state of emergency. Now, there's two other reasons that I've considered that we could declare. One is the possibility of accessing funding that we might need. And Sam asked before about what's the possible impact on the township's finances of the COVID crisis. And there used to be the provincial legislation that governed declarations of state of emergency used to provide for funding within it, that there was certain funding that was only accessible by municipalities if you declared a state of emergency. So two things on that. One, the legislation was changed a number of years ago, and that's no longer in the legislation. I've checked that myself. A lot of municipalities gave that as one of the reasons for declaring. So I've checked it myself. I asked the clerk of Zorra to check it. I asked the CAO of Zorra to check it. I asked the CAO of the county to check it. I phoned Ernie Hardiman on March, I can't remember, 18 or 19. Ernie and I had a big conversation about it. And there's no difference in Zorra's access to emergency funding from the province, whether we do or do not declare a municipal state of emergency. So that was one other reason. And the other reason, finally would be for me as the mayor to take advantage of the declaration of the state of emergency to impress upon residents that this is a very serious situation. We all need to take it seriously. We need to comply with the emergency orders. We need to look out for each other. We need to be safe and look after our community. And really, while I would like to think that I would get a lot of attention doing that, I think the fact that the Premier and the Prime Minister are having daily press conferences probably gets a whole lot of more attention than I would in doing it. So for all those reasons together, and frankly many more, because the mayors of all of the Oxford area municipalities have been meeting every day until this week to talk about that, and to this point, we've all agreed, considering all of those factors, that there really isn't an advantage to do that. Now, that being said, if things change, I will absolutely declare. And the circumstances under which that might change would be if a lot of Zorra staff either became sick themselves or had family members sick that they had to stay home to look after, and our ability to deliver certain services like fire, for instance. If one of our fire halls went down, there were so many sick that they couldn't, go out and drive a truck to a site and put out a fire or respond to a motor vehicle collision, I might declare. Or if Public Works had so many people sick that they couldn't reliably do all the sign inspections, for instance, and then we couldn't be sure that, there might be a stop sign down. We haven't inspected it in the time that we're supposed to, so please drive extra careful. Those might be reasons that I would declare, but so far we haven't had a scenario come up where declaring would allow us to do things better for the residents than not declaring. So for that reason, I have not done it yet, but it is still something that I review and consider every single day. Anyone else have anything they want to ask? Or we're over time now, but I don't mind. I'm in my basement at my desk doing work right now. This is work for me, so there's no need for me to get off here anytime soon.
I actually have a question, not COVID related.
Yeah.
So I know all new permits are on hold.
Yeah.
But where did we get to with the stretch of property on Middleton, like across from the marina? Did that all get zoned for an approval to move forward with housing?
So the deal hasn't closed yet. I'm a little bit limited into what I can tell you about that until the deal closes, but the deal is going to close now on July, was it 31st, Katie? Is that the date? July 31st, we're going to close that deal. They have not come forward with planning permission applications yet, but they are still working on those. They're drilling, I think, today. I haven't been in Thamesford today, but I know yesterday they were drilling wells on site that they had to do as part of their environmental record of condition for the property. They're doing a whole bunch of little sample drills and soil samples and everything. So they're still proceeding with all that work. And they are still, I talked to the owner of the company, Kingwood, on Monday or Tuesday anyway, and they are still proceeding with all their planning work and are going to be coming forward with planning applications probably in May, I think. So the whole thing's been delayed a little bit, Amanda, but it is still all proceeding. Anyone else? Katie. You guys can just, by the way, like Katie puts her hand up because she's conditioned from council meetings to put her hand up. But any of you who want to can just unmute and start asking a question if you want. But go ahead, Katie.
I was just going to say that when Kingwood has been doing that environmental work with the drilling and soil samples, I think some residents of Tempsford have seen, you know, construction equipment and some work being done in that stretch, and it's confusing because we don't know. We know that no new permits are being issued, but we don't know if this work is in relation to permits that were issued for this Kingwood strip or not. So I think there's probably more people that have that same question. Is this what we're seeing happening? Is this the beginning of work happening because were these permits already issued? And then, so the answer to that is not yet.
Yeah.
And hopefully, you know, a lot of this is unpredictable, but hopefully by the time things close and the applications for permits have come in, hopefully the restrictions on new construction will be lifted and things can move ahead. And if we're not there yet, whichever one comes first, then it'll be ready to go as soon as it's permitted.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I would add to that for everybody, that township staff are still accepting building permit applications and still accepting planning applications, whether it's for a minor amendment or a zone change or an official plan amendment. They're still accepting them and they're working on them and processing them. They're just stopping just short of approving the building permit application. So the idea is that as soon as they are allowed to, there would be a stack of papers that they would say, I've been through all this already, sign it and get it out there and get things rolling. So the whole process hasn't stopped. It's just the final step of permitting that has stopped in general. Anybody else have anything? No? Well, again, I would say same thing. I think it was Amanda that asked the question at the end of the kids one, that will we be doing this again? And I had talked to staff already before about how was this going to go? How were we going to measure whether it was successful or not? And really the criteria was how many people would phone in, how many questions would get asked. And, you know, we're at 313 now, a whole bunch of people connected. So my intention would be absolutely to do this again. I'm not sure exactly. We'll work out what if we think we'll do it, you know, will it be Wednesday at 2 o'clock next week or the week after or whatever, we'll work something out. But I'm very happy with the attendance for this. So my intention is to do it again. We'll work out what works and what doesn't. So if any of you want to follow up with questions after this, either for me or Katie, by all means, you can always email us outside here. But if you have ones for next time or any suggestions for next time too, you can absolutely let me know what those suggestions are for next time and we'll try and incorporate it. But I thought this was great. We got to keep up this back and forth between council and residents no matter what. As Matt pointed out, you know, if we're gonna find our way out of this, in particular in recreation, like he said, or any other services that we deliver, we got to talk with residents about it and understand how we're going to find our way out of it. So this is going to be the backbone of that. And I'll tell you, for me, doing my job, I literally feel, you know, handicapped by my inability to get out in the community and talk with people and understand the issues. You can't just cold call people and say, how's it going? What do you think of municipal government? How's your services doing? Like, you can't. So things like this are going to be really crucial to me in the next however long we're at this, to try and get a finger on the pulse of the community and what's going on. So by all means, you know, thank you for phoning in today. Thank you for your questions, and think of more for next week. Tell me what you thought worked and didn't work about this, and I promise you we will do this again in some format at some time in the not too distant future, because I think it's we have to find a way to keep residents talking with their government regardless of coronavirus. So if nobody has anything else, I think we're done for today, but I'll see you again hopefully in about a week or so. We'll do something. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks, Marcus.
Bye. Stay safe.